What's the longest you've ever been without going on social media? Some people might say 1 week, 2 weeks, maybe a couple of months. But for me, a vivid time where I remember going cold turkey on social media was 5 months of just no activity on social media. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about what happened when I took 5 months off social media, really just to reclaim my life back. So let's get right into it. So let's start off with a quick story time. A while ago, I was actually preparing for a very large exam, and I knew that this exam required a lot of me. It required me to give my full attention, my full focus, my full energy. And I knew that anything that was holding me back from succeeding on this exam was going to be a detriment to my score. So I decided to do what I always do and really look internally on what can I cut out to ensure that making my standard of really getting an amazing mark on this exam possible. Now, for me personally, I actually don't suffer with a lot of these major vices that I find a lot of people suffer with. So like drinking, partying, I don't know, like watching explicit content or vaping, drugs, and so much more. Those things don't really personally hold me back. But when I look at some of the things that were holding me back at the time, it was actually my social media consumption. So I'm somebody who actually likes to sometimes spend time on social media. Like, I'm not afraid to admit it. I mean, you're watching a video right now, so I'm assuming you also love watching videos, because I feel like watching things like YouTube videos and scrolling on social media it's a form of entertainment, but it kind of feels real. I mean, I don't really watch cable TV anymore, but that's a story for another day. But social media at the time that I was talking about was really just my crutch. It was the thing that I spent a lot of time on, and I enjoyed it. And I got to a point where I realized that if I wanted to do really well on this exam, that was something I was going to have to give up in order to really get the results I was hoping for. So I did just that. I went cold turkey and I said, I'm no longer going to be scrolling on these apps. So that meant from watching YouTube videos of various topics to really just scrolling on Instagram Reels. The list goes on and on, but I told myself I was giving it up, and I planned to give it up all the way until I was done, really feeling completely ready for said exam. And I'm going to basically walk you through some of the realizations and internal reflections I had throughout this period. And there's a lot of really strong insights, because this might help you on your journey if you're deciding, maybe I do need to give it up or give up another vice on my own journey. So when you first give up social media and you just go about it cold turkey, you're going to suffer with something that I like to call social media withdrawal. And just like the name sounds, you are going to be craving these social media apps. I actually didn't know how bad it was until I actually went ahead and, instead of just saying, oh, I'm no longer going to scroll on social media, or instead of putting a random time limit, I actually went ahead and actually deleted these apps off my phone. And therefore, I really couldn't go on unless I re-downloaded the apps and sort of went through that process. But that was very time consuming, and I just told myself I wasn't going to go ahead and do that. So after deleting those apps and really starting my first few days without social media, it initially started off to be very difficult. One of the things I realized, and this is how I knew social media had a pretty bad hold on me at one point, was even once I deleted those apps off my phone for social media, my brain was naturally still unlocking my phone, doing 2 swipes over, and trying to click on those social media apps unconsciously. And this was quite scary because I was so accustomed to doing so. Like, when I look at my current phone usage, I really only use 3 to 4 apps on my phone at most. And you're probably the exact same way as well. You probably use at most 5 different apps that you cycle through consistently. But I knew social media was that thing that was constantly taking up a lot of my time. So I first experienced these withdrawal symptoms after I deleted these social media apps, like I mentioned before. And it was really bad because I would scroll up through my phone and try to look for these apps, but I didn't have them. And that was the hardest part, because naturally you were so accustomed to just going through these social media cycles. If you haven't taken the time to really analyze how you use social media, is you typically have some pretty consistent patterns with it. For example, for me, sometimes right before I'm about to hop in the shower, I'll do a little quick scrolling session, or at one point it was right after I eat a large meal, or at the end of my night. These were the consistent times that my brain thought, okay, this is where we scroll on social media. But now when I didn't have those apps, the social media withdrawal was starting to feel real. Luckily, I was able to push through and I was able to persevere. And then you get to that second stage of after you're no longer using social media. And the second stage that I think about, and it's typically the reason why most people actually don't delete their social media, it's really because they have the fear of missing out, that typical FOMO. Because more importantly, social media has now become this source of where people really look to connect and keep up to date with what's going on within their lives. Like, I felt like if I wasn't on social media, I would be missing very important news, different opportunities, different events. And that was the largest fear I had of really just going cold turkey on these social media sites. A lot of us justify ourselves going on these social media platforms because it feels like we're connected with the world and we're keeping up to date with what all our friends are doing. And in reality, I realized that was just coping. But I'm going to show you the insights that I got from going 5 months without really consuming social media. But that was one of the biggest barriers and difficulties I had throughout this process. I was just worried that there was just an amazing opportunity that I wouldn't be able to capitalize on because I wasn't on social media. And most of you feel that exact same way with regards to social media. You keep it even though it can be distracting at times, but you keep it because it allows you to feel connected within the world. And I'm not sitting here and saying that you need to go ahead and delete your social media, but that's a reason that a lot of us use to justify. What I've actually realized through going 5 months without social media was you actually didn't miss any important news. In fact, any really significant news that was going on, either somebody would have texted me about it or I would have got it through another external source. Like if I signed up for a particular email or a particular event was going on, like the promotion would have been consistent across different platforms or different newsletters that I was signed up to in order for me to stay relevant to what's going on. So the next phase that I realized after, taking a while now, this is going into a month without social media, is that my brain and my brain chemistry started to change. One of the issues with consuming social media is that your dopamine response really changes. So for example, when you see all these bright colors, when you're really enticed with everything that's going on within the world, your dopamine receptors get really excited because there's so much information coming at you at once. And it's so much for your brain to handle. But then when you go on to do a more complex or boring task, you typically aren't able to stay focused for a prolonged period of time. That's because your new baseline of dopamine is so much higher, so you reading a book or studying a few pages feels extremely boring and dull. However, when I was able to take that break off from social media, the boring task actually started to become enjoyable, and this was where some of the magic started to occur. This allowed me to actually prepare more advancedly for my exam and really allowed me to show up. And what I was realizing was throughout my day, my biggest surges of dopamine were actually when I went to the gym and was listening to music. And I think that was a superpower because what I've realized is if you want to get a lot of positive dopamine within your life, like instead of that cheap dopamine, you want to get it after doing something strenuous. So for me, an exercise was a great way to get the endorphins released within my body as well as the dopamine going on because it encouraged me to go through something challenging in order to reap strong benefits. Social media is a little bit of a trick because it's almost like depleting your dopamine receptors and you're not really doing anything positive by just consuming a bunch of content for hours. When boring tasks start to become fun and really just not as mundane as they were before, this allowed me to actually want to go ahead and do the work that I had to do. Things like sending emails and messages to important people or studying for more hours on end really allowed me to consistently show up and really just appreciate the just dullness of life. The issue that we all see on social media is we think that everyone's life is a constant highlight. And most of my high performers understand that most people who are posting on social media are only really posting highlights. Like if you watch someone's trip to Mexico and it's a 14-minute vlog, I want you to understand in a span of 2 weeks, they filmed 14 minutes of that vlog to show you the best highlights, the best moments, the best smiles. And that was the vlog that they portrayed to you. And I get it because it's going to do well for views and it's going to be an entertaining video to watch. But what you don't see as a viewer is you don't see the 14 hours it took for them to fly into Mexico, or you don't see them waiting in line for over 3 hours to get to that one venue that they want to do, or you don't see the time when the waiter had got their food wrong and there was an issue with their room, and the list goes on and on. Social media is really just showing these fabricated versions, and it's really tricking ourselves into thinking that that is the normality and that's the norm. So that was extremely powerful for me just to really enjoy the monotony and the dullness of life. And to make this even more powerful, it wasn't so much that the boring task just became easier, the boring task became more enjoyable. So anything from going on a long walk or reading a book or even down to just cleaning my room, these mundane tasks that a lot of people wouldn't get quite stimulated from were actually my new form of stimulation. And in a weird way, it was making me appreciate life on a much more deeper level. I felt like I was becoming a lot more present. I felt like I was showing up better in conversations. I felt like every single thing from just looking outside, smelling the fresh air, like that meant a lot more for me. And I know that sounds crazy to think about, but social media can really have that effect, especially if you are constantly on it on a consistent basis. And this is when I slowly start to fall in love with my routine. I was waking up at a consistent time, reading at a consistent time, showing up at the gym, eating at a consistent time. And that consistency was predictable, but the best part about it was I wasn't consuming or wasting my time with things that weren't going to serve me. Now, the next thing that I really noticed from taking 5 months off social media was I started to get my time back. So like I mentioned before, social media was my biggest crutch at the time because it was taking up a lot of my time. And on top of that, I wasn't being productive. Social media is a very powerful tool in taking up a lot of your time because you can spend what feels like 15 to 30 minutes on a social media app, but then when you look at the clock, 2 hours has gone by. After you were scrolling for quite some time, you're going through different apps, you told yourself, oh, a few more, you just keep going because the algorithm was targeting exactly what you wanted to hear. But then at the end of that session, you realize 2 hours has gone by and that's time that you will never get back. And this will hurt that much more if you're trying to strive to become the best version of yourself. You're trying to strive to become a high performer and perform at the best level because you know that that is actually bringing you a away from the person that you want to become. And you'll be surprised how many people are caught up in that social media loophole. Really getting my time back was a very powerful result of really going 5 months without social media. So that 2-hour block that I would normally spend scrolling on social media was used to really go into my more productive task. Again, that meant more studying, that meant more deep work, that meant more focus, that meant more reading, that meant being more intentional with the people and peers within my life. And at first it was really hard for me to really see this or understand its benefits, but I noticed this pretty early on when I was actually completing a lot of my tasks quite early on in the day, and I had a lot of my day just open to myself. And that was a very rewarding feeling because I'm someone who loves to just keep stockpiling things throughout the day. I've always been someone to say like there's always more that you can do, which I truly believe there is. But when I set a plan out for the day and I stuck with it fully and my day was complete by 5 p.m., I really had the entire day to really just do whatever I want. And because I wasn't consuming social media at the time, that meant going into more intentional things. So maybe it meant opening up another book and reading some more, or maybe it meant just studying and reading a book on something that was entertaining or going on a nice long walk. But you can sort of see the point how I was pouring more into being more intentional with who I am and who I'm becoming. Another thing I noticed throughout that 5-month period of not going on social media was the mental clarity that I gained. This is very powerful. Not a lot of people talk about this when giving up social media, but you know that inner voice that you have that's telling you right from wrong, that's telling you when things don't feel right or when something is an opportunity that you should strive towards. That voice got a lot more clear within my own mind and body. And I truly believe that that was because I wasn't constantly consuming a lot of opinions and videos on social media. I know that you all feel that when you log onto your social media sites and you see a barrage of different colors and different things that you can tap on. It's almost like a kid entering a candy store. I mean, all the videos are open. There's so many questions. There's so many topics that you can explore and discover, and all these videos look so enticing. It feels so amazing just to click on one and just watch what they're talking about. But not having that at my disposal, not allowing that to just trigger my dopamine response, and really just being more mentally clear and allowing me to have more intrusive thoughts allowed me to really fortify my mental clarity. So this meant when I was sitting down and eating, and so, you know, sometimes when I'm sitting down and eating, I would have like a YouTube video playing just in the background. This allowed me to actually just sit down with my own internal thoughts. And for a lot of people, you'll be surprised that is quite difficult because they don't really like to sit with themselves. They don't like to sit with their internal thoughts. But I find a lot of beauty in this because you can start to ask yourself the more difficult questions. What were some of the conversations and what was the intention behind it? I found myself going so deep that I would replay back conversations I was having throughout my day and applying psychology principles to them so I could understand human psychology on a deeper level. And it was a really addicting process because you'll come to realize that you as an individual are extremely talented. You have your own inner intuition and you have your own genius. The problem is a lot of people are constantly going to things like the internet and social media to really get bombarded with their advice and on a consistent basis. Like, I'm sure you know so many people throughout your own life who would watch a particular creator or certain things on social media, and then they start to emulate every single thing that person does. In fact, I actually know somebody, I'm not going to say who because this person might be watching my video, but this person, and it's quite obvious that they consume another type of person's content. And as a result, they create content in the exact same way, format, music, etc. that person is doing. If you want to become a high performer and you want to become the most authentic version of yourself, you need to understand that if you're just mimicking a version of what someone else is doing, you'll never lean into your true authenticity. And that can be a problem as a high performer because you won't be recognized for your own unique traits and talents. So even when I come on and really document this YouTube channel, I'll take bits and pieces from some creators that I like, but ultimately this is my own vision, this is my own creativity, and I'm having so much fun with it because as this channel starts to grow and becomes better, and you'll realize I have my own distinct style about how I script videos, about how I really go about filming my videos and really providing a ton of value for all my high performers who are watching. But if you're constantly in that constant consumption of social media, you won't be able to form your own opinions about certain topics. You're going to let your algorithm control how you think, how you move, and the things that you think about on a consistent basis. And I've talked about this so many times. Your algorithms are so powerful. You know, just recently I was watching a bunch of house tours. I love watching these like renovations of homes and home decor. And now on my algorithm, there is a ton of different home decor videos. And you have to understand that that might be completely different from your algorithm because it's going to have its own topics, its own TV shows. But that mental clarity that I got back from not spending that 2 hours a day on social media was profound because it allowed me, especially as a deep thinker, to think even deeper and ask myself more critical questions. So according to my YouTube analytics, more than 88% of you who watch this channel are not yet subscribed. So if you get any values from my videos, all I ask is that you hit that subscribe button. It's completely free, and this allows me to continue to provide more amazing videos for all of you high performers. So let's get back into it. All right, so another amazing benefit to really going cold turkey on social media for 5 months was I actually stopped comparing myself to other people. Now, this is a common thing that a lot of people face when they're constantly consuming social media content. content. And I honestly think it's quite normal for all of us humans to compare ourselves to others. I know a lot of people say, oh, comparison's the thief of all joy and you shouldn't be doing it. I want to caveat this by saying comparison can become very dangerous when you don't have the full context of someone else. We see a lot of people on the internet who are portraying a certain lifestyle. If you don't have any context about how they obtained that lifestyle or what they did to get that, and when I say context, it's not just what they say, but really the truth behind the curtains, it's really hard to compare them and be effective in their comparison. So for example, I know this person, I won't say who again, but they drive an amazing vehicle. This vehicle is like sick. I know for some people, it's some people's dream car. However, I know that this person's family is extremely wealthy. So if you're comparing yourself to that individual, they have a massive head start that a lot of people may not have, having a family that can afford and pay for a very nice, luxurious vehicle. So a lot of people will make those comparisons, and that's an unhealthy comparison because again, you don't have the context to understand that that person was actually gifted these things and you may not come from that same advantage. And I noticed that once in a while, whether you want to admit it or not, when you spend time on social media, you are constantly comparing yourself to other people. You use them as metrics. A lot of you consume content from hyper successful people and you're saying to yourself, well, I want to achieve there, or I want to aspire to get there, which is totally healthy because you want to progress in the right direction. But it becomes unhealthy when you're comparing yourself and you don't have the context to really back that up those claims. So anyways, what I'm trying to say here is that once I gave up social media for 5 months, that sense of comparison wasn't present anymore. And that was a very healthy realization. I started looking more internally into my own life instead of externally at the lives of others. Like I said before, I enjoy spending time once in a while watching a YouTube video or getting up to date with what's going on. But it can become a serious issue when you know more about other people's lives than you do your own. Like there's so many people right now that know so much info about the latest trade deals and the latest athletes, or what's going on in this tournament, or what this actor or what this TV show is particularly doing. And like I said before, it's nothing wrong with it to know it in moderation, but when you know somebody so well, better than you even know yourself, I think that can be a real problem. You see this all the time, especially with people who like love sports. They will sit down and commentate and debate on sports for hours, telling you about what someone averages a night on their points per game, and the reason why they didn't win this night is because the player was actually traveling, or the reason why their team isn't first in the division is because one of your best players got injured. I really think that becomes a problem when you can't even answer basic questions about your own life. Like, what do you want to do in the next future? What is your success average? Are you tracking certain metrics to bring yourself closer to the person that you want to become? And the irony with this is typically when we over obsess about other people's lives, these are typically people who are far much more advanced than us in a particular realm. So another great example of this is music and entertainment. Let's take one of the biggest artists in the world, Drake, right? He's exceptional. I personally really like his music. I think he does a phenomenal job. But if you get to the point where you know more things about Drake's life than your own life, I truly believe as a high performer, this is a problem. I actually wouldn't even consider you a high performer at that point because you're, again, more obsessed with another man and another man's success than your own. You have to realize that a lot of these individuals are already hyper successful. And another thing that's quite powerful is like you have to ask yourself, if you were going through some situation or danger, would this person that you idolize on a consistent basis even know that you were going through this turmoil? And the chances are no. And I'm not saying you should stop supporting your favorite celebrity or stop watching certain games, but what I am saying is if it gets to a point where it's more than the work that you're supposed to be putting in, I truly believe that's an issue. So with my time off of social media, a lot of that time was no longer put into comparison. I was never looking at someone else's life and what their accomplishments were. Rather, I was putting all that time and energy into my own life. And this is very important for a lot of you who are still on that phase of building yourself into the best version that you know you possibly can be. It can be very discouraging when you look at somebody who's on their chapter 100 and you're just starting out and you feel like it's just not working. But if you actually have the context behind this, you might realize that you would be a lot further if you continue to persevere. One of the best analogies is I actually have a mentor for content, someone who constantly gives me feedback and advice on how I can grow and become better. And one of the things that my mentor had shared with me was that he truly believes that I'm a better content creator than he was at 1,000 subscribers. So what he means is when he had 1,000 subscribers and I'm currently at the time of this recording around 1,000 subscribers, he told me that I'm actually showing more signs of talent than him. And to me, that was personally crazy because I was like, well, he does an exceptional job with his videos. He's extremely consistent. He provides a ton of value, but getting that sort of feedback and insight is a reminder, even though all the numbers may not be there yet, or the certain progressions within business may not be there yet, I know that I'm progressing on the right track, especially because I'm getting that confirmation from someone who's doing it at such a consistent and successful level. So all this to say is that comparison that is really robbing a lot of people of really being proud of themselves internally and just focusing on their own life, that went away from me when I took 5 months off social media. And like I said before, as that mental clarity started to come back, as those internal thoughts started to become more clear, my own opinions for the life that I wanted to create, the values that I had, my systems just became more refined and more clear. Like if you knew me personally, you'll know that I'm quite a deep thinker. I like to think about situations and really look internally on how I can self-improve. And that's really just the thesis of this channel. But a lot of that comes from being able to spend time with myself, being able to ask myself certain questions, being able to take my journal and write tons of pages of intrusive thoughts, of learnings and lessons, being able to study books from wise mentors, and then taking all those things and really compiling my own value and internal system of belief, and then being able to articulate it to all of you. And that cycle sort of repeats itself. But the way I get very clear on my own internal clarity comes from being able to just sit with myself alone, and on top of that, really spending time away from these social media sites and apps. And any of my high performers, especially those who aspire to be leaders, this is going to be an essential skill on your journey that you're going to need to hone in on, because you'll get to a point where you as a leader have to form strong opinions. I know we're currently in that age of AI where, everyone's using AI for everything. And what the research and data is actually showing, and I was actually talking to my dad about this, is a lot of people are having these forms of AI over dependence where they're asking their AI softwares, like, what should they eat for breakfast? What should they even do today? And if you're getting to that point, especially as a leader, you're not able to actually think for yourself and be a critical thinker. Now, for my high performers who are watching, I know some of you have aspirations to start your own businesses, work with teams, build out systems. If you have this inability to really think for yourself and form your own opinions, you're going to probably be one of those people who are going to have to rely on an AI software to make decisions for you. Like, think about how silly that is. Imagine you're like this leader of this organization, and in order to make a big decision, you have to go to your AI bot and say, hey, should I go left or should I go right? And the person says, you should go right. And you tell all of your team members that you should go right. If anyone figures that out, like, you would be classified as a fraud and someone who's really inauthentic. So my ability to build out my own internal value system through really years of compiling, the way that I accelerated that process and made it a lot quicker was taking that 5 months off social media as a whole, because again, it gave me that clarity to think much deeper and really ask myself the critical questions that I was avoiding. Now you might be asking yourself, okay, Miles, so what happened after the 5 months that you took social media off? Was there any major milestones? Like, when you came back to social media, did anything change? And honestly, and I think a lot of you can relate, if you've taken these massive breaks off social media, you'll realize that a lot of the stuff on these social media apps, majority of it is just garbage. And I don't say that to be rude or disrespectful, but what I do say is a lot of it is not that important. We've placed such a high level of importance on some of the latest celebrity gossip or what's going on with certain sporting events, but you'll realize that none of it really matters. And at the same time, there will always be new news. There's always going to be new gossip, new drama that's constantly circulating. So I realized, like, after taking that long break off consuming reels and TikToks and YouTube shorts and just long form YouTube videos, a lot of the content that I was consuming, especially on those like short form content, it was quite literally garbage. Now, this is a caveat, because if you're sitting down watching videos like this, I'm not just saying this because I'm making these sorts of videos, but really self-improvement, leveling up, becoming the best version of yourself. I actually would consider that productive, especially if you're the type of person to watch a video like this and then take action in your own life to become the best version of yourself. That is a productive form of learning and leveling up your life and really becoming a high performer. So if you do that, like, I'm not talking about you, but when I was on Instagram, for example, there's a lot of just slob on reels. Like, a video will go viral for some reason that isn't even related to a video. Like, for example, recently I saw this video of this 4-year-old kid who was at this gym doing this exercise machine, and it was like this thing where he didn't want to do the exercise because he felt like his muscles were going to grow too big. And basically everybody in the comment section was like, little bro, like, you're 4 years old, you don't have to worry about your muscles getting too big, or the machine's not going to fall down and break on you, something along those lines. But basically what I'm trying to say is a lot of things that are going viral on these social media platforms aren't even going viral for their intended reason. You'll see someone post a video of their artwork and it's not going viral because they drew a nice piece of art. It's going viral because people are making fun of the person's, gap or spaced tooth. And that's just an example, but I'm sure if you scroll enough on social media, you know exactly what I mean. And once I realized this, I realized that a lot of the stuff on this app was just garbage. It was not pointless. It was not bringing me closer to the person that I wanted to become, aside from, again, the more tutorial and helpful videos and self-improvement. And ultimately, that was a great reminder for myself to know that I did not miss anything off taking a break off social media for 5 months. And a lot of you might be asking, okay, well, you took this break off social media. Why did you decide to come back? And what I've realized is I don't think social media in itself is the enemy the way a lot of people think it is. Instead, I think it's your relationship with how you use social media. Because right now on this platform that you're watching this video, you could typically learn anything from how to do your own furniture, from how to clean your room and make it aesthetically pleasing, to how to lift and become consistent within the gym. Or you can spend your time watching a lot of other stuff like drama or entertainment. And it really comes down to really how you use this tool. For example, when it comes to video editing, I learned all my skills on video editing from watching YouTube videos, watching tutorials, tutorials, sitting down, taking notes, and actually trying it out myself. Or there's so many times when I had issues with my car, or I needed to fix a particular piece of furniture, or I needed to fix something in the house, that I searched up the YouTube video and then I got my answer within a few seconds. So again, social media isn't bad. In fact, social media can be an extremely powerful tool if you know how to use it correctly. And that's why I returned, because I want to ensure that if I was spending my time on social media, at least 90% of the time it was used towards things that were going to bring me closer to the person that I wanted to become, allowing me to become a high performer and perform at the best version of myself. So yeah, that is it for today's video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. These are the insights that I got from really taking 5 months off social media to reclaim back my life. And I'm extremely grateful that I went through this process, because now I understand that if I need to go through another massive transformation and I ever feel like social media is holding me back, I know the benefits that lay on the other side of taking a break from social media, so it's something that I can look into. I've also made a very in-depth video on how to control your social media usage, and if you want to check that out, I think that'll be a great resource for you, because it will allow you to keep your social media platforms, but know how to use social media to your advantage and in a healthy and respectable way. For those of you who are interested in one-on-one coaching to work with me to create systems to really level up your goals and become the best version of yourself, click the first link in my description or pinned in the comment section to join High Performers Elite. At the same time, if you're interested in joining a community of like-minded individuals who want to strive to become the best versions of themselves, who want to explore these topics much more in depth, I also have a community waitlist form down below, so check that out as well. All right, so that's it for today's video, YouTube. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And you know what I always say, make sure to always believe that you will achieve. My name is Miles, aka Mr. High Performance, and I am signing off. Woo!